Lair of the Mad Mage is the newest dungeon added with Mod 16 Undermountain, and is the hardest dungeon in Neverwinter to date. Harder than Castle Ravenloft was at release, this dungeon convinced most players its first boss was impossible. With that in mind, this dungeon is not for the faint of heart. You will die, you will wipe, and you will be frustrated, but with perseverance and with the help of this video, you will succeed. Today, I'll be covering everything you need to know to complete the Lair of the Mad Mage. As is the case with any of the harder dungeons in Neverwinter, I would strongly suggest coming prepared. That means having a decent supply of Scrolls of Life and at least one full Stone of Health. The first boss is the hardest part of Lair of the Mad Mage, and most runs will end here. This boss is mainly a DPS check. This means that if your group doesn't have enough damage output, this fight is not possible. At the start of the fight, players will pick corners. Typically each DPS gets their own corner, while the tank and the healer will pick a corner together. At 80% health, or about 4 bars down, Arcturia will teleport to the middle of the room, and mimics will spawn from each corner. These mimics will charge towards Arcturia in the middle of the room. Should they reach her, they will despawn and spawn golems in their place. Golems are adds that hit very hard and have a lot of health. Usually, 1 or 2 golems is normal, but anything over 5 is wipe-worthy. This is why players picked corners. Each DPS is responsible for killing the mimics that spawn in their respective corners. Typically, if everyone kills their mimics before they reach the center, everyone will only need to kill 1 mimic, but it's not uncommon to have to kill 2 or 3. After the mimic phase, she'll put a random player in a cocoon. The healer must heal the cocoon to full health, and cleanse a debuff put on the cocooned player. The player will then explode after a short period of time. If anyone is caught inside the explosion, both players will be instantly killed. If everyone escapes the radius in time, and the debuff is cleansed, the cocoon player will still explode, but live. This will repeat every time she goes into the mimic phase. Alternatively, the cocoon player can relog and the cocoon will not explode, but I believe this is not working as intended, or is not intended to work, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. It seems that usually she'll stop using the mimic phase after she's lost around 50% of her health, but keep in mind that she will continue to randomly cocoon players. Another important note, during the fight she will spawn clouds of butterflies. Should you stand inside these clouds, you will not be able to attack, so I would strongly suggest avoiding the butterflies at all costs. Green gas will also spawn during the fight and will make your screen blurred. I would also recommend avoiding this when possible. When she's below 50% health, she will also use an attack that stuns players who are looking at her. Just turn around when you see a giant red eye above her head to avoid the stun. Assuming that you know all the mechanics and your group has the damage, Arcturia is a pushover. Be careful in this next room. The constructs can use an attack that knocks you back, and it's fairly easy to get knocked off to your death. The next boss is easily the second hardest in the dungeon. This boss is a heal check, meaning that just like Arcturia in the DPS check before, if your group doesn't have the healing, it's going to be very hard if not impossible to get past him. That being said, the boss isn't too difficult if you understand his mechanics. This is the Boar Worm. The worm has 3 phases that he will rotate through. The first phase is just like any other boss. Smack him and avoid the red. He has a couple large AoE attacks and will occasionally pull players who are too far away towards him. If you see this red circle, run away from your party. The second phase is where things start to get complicated. When you see this text, the worm will retreat back under the sand and pull everyone towards the middle. Should you actually reach the middle, you'll be instantly killed. Players have to run towards the outside of the arena to resist the worm's pull. Rocks will now fall from the ceiling around the outside. These rocks will wait a second and then fall towards the middle. If the rocks actually reach the middle, they'll power up and extend the final phase. Everyone has to kill the rocks before they fall to the middle, which isn't too hard since all the rocks are level 1 and almost everything will kill them in one hit. The final phase starts as soon as the sand stops pulling. The worm will cast several large AoE attacks that will lessen in damage the more targets hit. The party must group together and stand still somewhere in the arena and soak up the damage. It's the healer's job to keep everyone alive here. Hollowed ground from a cleric is a lifesaver here, and if the party didn't miss many rocks in the phase before it, this shouldn't take too long. Keep in mind you can see the phase timer on the side of your screen, where your quests are usually displayed. The phases will now repeat. The number of times you will cycle through the phases and the time between them is somewhat random, but they'll always be in the same order. The final boss is the easiest at the moment, but that doesn't mean he's easy, and I believe they will more than likely make him harder in the future. The fight starts with Trobriand in the middle of 4 deactivated robot scorpions. During the fight, he will cast large electrical AoE effects. If he hits a scorpion with said AoE, they will wake up and attack the party. He will randomly assign party members a polarity during the fight, either positive or negative, and link them together. Linked players must look at the polarity of the player they are linked with. Polarity that matches means that the players will be pushed away from each other. Polarity that is different means that the players will be pulled together. Remember, opposites attract. Players that are pulled together will collide, like in CN, and be knocked up into the air. They will also be given a large debuff to both outgoing and incoming damage. You really don't want this. When linked with an opposite polarity, run to the outsides of the arena as far as you can, and use your shift skill when pulled together to minimize the risk of collision. If linked with someone of the same polarity, get close together to avoid being pushed into the electrified coils along the outside of the arena. At around 30%, he'll become invincible and start channeling a large AoE, a lot like the final boss in Tong. There are 4 pillars around the boss that are charging his attack, and the party must kill them ASAP. Each pillar killed will slow the charge, and as long as it's not around 50% of the way charged when he attacks, everyone should survive. It's also a good idea to equip the HP Guild boon if you have it for this fight, just to survive that attack. As you can see here, I didn't have enough HP, so I died. And that's it. This took a lot of experimentation and effort to figure out and learn every mechanic, so I hope you guys find it helpful. If you enjoyed the video or learned something from it, please hit the like button or drop a comment down below. Good luck everyone, and have fun in Lair of the Mad Mage.